Hi, I'm Madeleine. I lead up Cloud's responsible AI team, and I'm here with my colleague Neama and an amazing customer, Doug English, co-founder and CTO of Culture Amp. And we want to begin with you, our customers. We got to start with the customer needs and concerns, and think about that in the context of how the industry is evolving and continues to evolve. We've seen huge opportunity in the generative AI space. It's an exciting time. I feel like the energy at the conference right now is simply phenomenal. It's truly exhilarating, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. At the same time, there's a tremendous amount of concern. There's scrutiny from governments and regulators and policymakers and journalists, but also we're hearing concerns, questions about the types of risks being raised from customers, our customers' customers, creators, fans. Maybe you heard about the backlash against Marvel using AI-generated opening credits. Or maybe you're keeping track of the growing number of lawsuits that generative AI is engendering. It's a challenging landscape to navigate. There's a lot of questions, and we know that to grow your business and implement generative AI effectively and successfully, you need a clear path through the risks and concerns. And that's where our approach to enterprise readiness comes. We have built our enterprise readiness around 4 key pillars based on questions that you're seeing. For instance, we hear you say that my data is my differentiator, but how can I protect my IP while customizing foundation models? We hear you say, I want to be an AI everywhere organization, but how do I deploy AI to every employee and in every location while keeping everything safe, secure, and compliant? And I also want to scale up to meet the moment, but how can I scale up with generative AI-specific infrastructure cost-effectively, sustainably, and reliably? And last, but certainly not least, I want to be effective, safe, and responsible. How do I make generative AI work for every end user in all the different types of use cases while mitigating potential harms and negative impacts? How does Google Cloud address these concerns? Well, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Neama to take you through some more details.
Thank you, Madeleine. The answer is enterprise readiness. All right, we're done. We can go home. All right, now, so what do we mean by enterprise readiness? Well, enterprise readiness is at the core of all we do with generative AI. All the pieces we build, how we've built them, and how we take it to market is enterprise ready. Now, enterprise readiness in particular, when we talk about it, there are 4 different pieces to this. 1 is around data governance and privacy. 2 is around security and compliance support. 3 is around infrastructure reliability and sustainability. And then finally, responsible AI. Now we're going to go through these 4 pillars one by one. We're also going to tie them back to those questions we were asking earlier in the presentation. So my data is my differentiator. I want to use my data to customize these foundation models, but I want to keep my data private and secure. This is data governance and privacy. So first off, your data is your data. Google Cloud will never use your data to train our foundation models. Now, when I say the word data, that means not just your data on storage or in GCS or BigQuery, but it's also the prompts. It's also the logs, the metadata. We will never use these to train any of our foundational models. We make that promise to you. Additionally, it's important to understand that while Gen AI is new, the Google Cloud Platform has been around for many, many years, and we have commitments to security and privacy. And we stand by these commitments that we've made, whether that's GDPR, whether that's transparency, accessibility, privacy. They are built into the platform, and then when you build Gen AI, because you're building on top of the platform, you inherit these protections and securities and commitments as well. Now, when we talk about privacy, it's important to understand that privacy is built in by design and by default into our entire stack. What I mean by that is we assume you don't want your data to be seen. We assume you don't want Google to access your data. But that's by default. You have to actively opt in for us to be able to do anything. If I'm trying to help you troubleshoot a safety filter issue, I don't know what your prompts were, and I don't know what the responses were. You're going to have to tell me, right? As a PM, I have to do that. Additionally, it's important to understand that we have tools and services that are built on top of AI to help you with your privacy. Things like data loss prevention, or also tools to keep your data private, to be able to mask the information, make sure the PII is not in there. Also, transparency and access of understanding. For example, if a Googler or anyone else is accessing your information, you can see those logs. You can actually understand who's doing what in your systems. And then also tools like impact assessments as well. Again, if there is an incident, if something occurs, you have those tools, they've existed, you inherit them as part of generative AI. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, that's fine, that's dandy, but how do I customize my foundation models with my data, but keep this information safe? That's where these adapter layers come into play. You can also be called adapter models, adapter weights as well, same thing. Essentially, when you are training parameter efficient tuning your model, when you are reinforcement learning, when you're doing anything of that nature, all of your changes accumulate in the adapter layer. Now, the foundation model is frozen at time of inference, at the time of the request. It's an API that occurs inside of your project. And then the adapter layers, which are inside of your security perimeter, I'll get to that in a second, sits on top of the API. And when you make a prompt request, the prompt and the adapter layers all get encrypted and secured and whatever, and then they get sent to the model. So all of your data essentially sits in the adapter layer. And by the way, that is customer IP. The terms of service make that clear as well. So the adapter layer is yours to own, to keep, to delete, do whatever you want with it. And that is how you can customize while protecting your IP. All right, so that was data governance and privacy. Now, I want to be able to deploy AI everywhere, all across the world, every user, every employee, but I want to keep myself safe and be in compliance all around the world. This is where security and compliance support come into play. Again, Google Cloud has been around for a few years. We take security very seriously, and it has been built into our infrastructure, into our platform. So, security by design. This is important. You have multiple layers of encryption throughout the entire stack. You have rigorous controls. You have supply chain audits to make sure that the pieces that are building that infrastructure has been audited and made sure to be secure. You have ongoing security testing and threat analysis as well. All of these inherited by your generative AI models. You have security by default. You have things like cryptographic secured identity for zero trust models. Essentially, again, what that basically means is I don't trust anybody. You have to prove to me who you are before I can give you access to any of this information. You also have, again, default encryption at rest. Your information is encrypted and secured, and you hold the key. Google can't access it. And then, of course, security and deployment. We have things like suspicious activity monitoring. We have malware identification. We have encryption at rest and in transit as well. All of these are not new. Gen AI is new. You inherit all of the security and privacy and safety. All right, let's talk a little bit more about security controls in particular. First, you have VPCSC. This makes sure to understand who's accessing what, who gets access, who can access your security perimeter, and how that's defined. You have customer managed encryption keys. Again, you as the customer hold the encryption key. Google cannot access your data because you actually have the encryption key. You also have access transparency, the ability to understand who is accessing what. If a Googler, for some reason, is going in and looking at your system, you can see that in the access transparency as well. All right, this is my favorite slide. Very pretty. Gone through so many legal reviews. All right, let's start at the outside. The blue box right here is your security perimeter. The reason you have the VPCSC, the CMAC, the DRZ, the AXT, all of those things that we just talked about, they all apply to everything, right? So even the large foundation model, that API we're talking about, your security perimeter applies to all of it, right? Okay, so that's that. Then, as we talked about before, you have the foundation model. It's an API. It is instantiated inside of your project, right? It's frozen at time of inference. It can change over time, right? Like there are new models. We just announced one yesterday. But at time of inference, it's frozen. Then you have the adapter layers. We talked about this again. All of your IP changes, all of the parameter efficient tunings you're doing, the LoRa tunings, the reinforcement learnings, all accumulated in the adapter layer that sits inside your project. Again, all the security is there. And then everything is encrypted in transit, either at rest or in transit. And when you make that request, your prompt plus the adapter layer are sent together to the API. We only hold your prompt for as long as is necessary to do the transition, to do the transaction, and then we send it back and delete everything. I have never had as many conversations with lawyers in my life in the past 6 months, and essentially it's this chart right here. But it's important to understand, right? So again, if you have questions, this is how we are doing it. All right, so it's not just security, it's also compliance support. Now, this is an eye chart on purpose because it wants to show you the breadth of compliance that Vertex has across our platform. We have over, 2 million control instances audited annually by third parties. Now, one thing I want to point out here, this is not the chart for all of Gen AI, right? Gen AI, it's brand spanking new. When you have compliance, when you have these pieces, you have to actually go through and get them audited and approved for compliance. So for example, HIPAA was in June. We just achieved a few of these as well. So be careful. This gives you a sense for the entire platform, right? The different pieces and compliance pieces. But again, talk to your customer rep to understand, I don't know, if you're in Malaysia and you want, I don't know, BRM or something like this, do we support that yet? Where is it on the roadmap to be able to achieve that kind of piece of compliance? But this is very, very important. We are working very hard in Q4 to hit many of these compliance milestones. You know, the products have been built. Now we can go and get them all certified and compliant. Oops, sorry. Okay. You want to be able to scale up your infrastructure to meet the moment, but you want to do it in a way that can scale up, scale out, not cost an arm and a leg, can do it with low latency, and also not kill the planet while you're doing it. This is where our world-class infrastructure comes into play. All right, another pretty chart. I like this one as well. I had to change that number. It says 38 down there. It was 37 last week. It became 38 because I think a second data center went up in Germany. So just FYI. Again, this gives you a sense for the breadth of infrastructure and data centers and nodes that Google Cloud has. Now again, it's important to understand there's a difference between Gen AI and there's a difference between our overall infrastructure. Can you train generative AI models in every single data center? No, there are TPUs, GPUs, there are specific pieces. Everyone needs to be able to deploy those. It's a difficult piece to do. But this gives you an understanding of, as we are rolling out across the world for Gen AI specific, where we are going and how we are doing this. Now, it's important to understand that Google Cloud's infrastructure was purpose-built for large models. The tensor chip, right? That was purpose-built to run large tensor models, which just happens to be generative AI. So when you are looking for the best-in-class infrastructure, both from a TPU or a GPU perspective, doesn't matter, you have that choice, you have that ability, you want to be able to run that on Google Cloud. You have that optionality. Additionally, it's important to understand it's the speed and the performance and that fast inference. Oftentimes, how quickly you can get those responses are important in a generative AI setting. So having those low latencies, those abilities to have the quick responses, very, very important. Additionally, it's all well and good if I have the greatest infrastructure in the world, but it's going to be super, super costly, right? So price to performance ratios, look at those as well. Compare the GPUs, the TPUs, what's right for you. You can get that with your large language models on our infrastructure. And then, of course, the ability to scale up to meet the moment, to be able to have those capacities and then scale up and scale down as necessary. And, of course, all built on an open source platform. Now, it's also important to understand that it is sustainable. Google Cloud is the cleanest cloud. We can make that commitment. We have those statistics. So if you or your customers want to, make sure that you're not killing the planet while we're training these massive models, you want to run your workloads on Google Cloud. All right. Now, my last pillar is responsible AI. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Madeleine.
There's so much more, too. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to be here and talk to you all about responsible AI, because this is what I do every day. This is what I and my team work through. And we're meeting the need of knowing that our customers want these new systems to be effective and responsible and safe. So you may know that in 2018, Google was one of the first companies to announce a set of AI principles. These principles put beneficial use, users, and user safety and avoidance of harms as essential business considerations. These do not happen after product development. They happen during, before, and iteratively throughout. These principles they truly are the kind of blueprint for how we develop AI. And this is also, like Neama was saying, inherited. Generative AI is inherited these principles. So principles are only as good as they are when they're put into practice. So since 2018, and these principles have been announced, we have iteratively been developing frameworks and processes to put these principles into practice. And in Google Cloud, we look at our work in responsible AI, not only in how we develop our cloud products, but also how we enable our customers to develop and innovate responsibly. So with this dual focus in mind, we think about our work along three primary dimensions. One, which I'm going to walk you through. One is along product and data governance processes. These are repeatable, scalable processes that ensure during development that our products align to our AI principles and our data commitments in a consistent, repeatable way. The second category focuses on tooling and support for our customers after we've launched products when our customers need to deploy. And then third, we also aim to advance the industry. We want to share research, education, and best practices to help us all move forward in implementing AI responsibly. So I want to take you through what an example of one of these governance processes look like. So we begin by identifying potential harms. Then we assess the risk level. And then finally, we develop mitigation plans. These mitigation plans are essential because we want to think through not only what might be potential harms or opportunities, but how do we ensure that those harms don't come to pass. So what's an example? Well, we do this for our cloud products as well as products that are custom built with our professional services organization. So for instance, there was a customer that wanted to analyze images on their website that would flag content that might be offensive to users to enable better editorial decisions and just enable better ads targeting. This is a great use case. This also has the potential to exacerbate bias or create new forms of user harm. And so as part of the development process, we worked with the customer to identify potential harms, both based on their business experience as well as Google's business experience, and set out particular sets of evaluations and ultimately policies to limit or mitigate potential bias in the image classifiers we developed. Ultimately, this collaborative process with either product teams or with our customers results in a better experience for users, and it creates a longer lasting value for AI when it's out in the world. We've also developed many technical mitigations, and I want to walk you through some of these. These end up being a lot of the mitigations that we articulate as part of our responsible review. For instance, we've created a set of safety filters. For instance, the Palm content that is processed by the Palm API is assessed against what we call a list of safety attributes, which include things like harmful categories, things that may be toxic or overtly sexual, topics that may be considered sensitive. And as a customer, you can leverage these safety filters and define confidence thresholds that meet your business needs. Because what we've also learned over the years of working on responsible AI is that details and context matter. And so it's really, really important to know the specifics of your use case. With these safety filters, you as the customer can take comprehensive measures to detect specific content that you're concerned about, to protect your users, and to better manage brand risk. These technical guardrails, we want to provide some kind of peace of mind, but also want to emphasize that this is a continually evolving space, and so we constantly have to update these kinds of filters and continually look for new forms of mitigation as new forms of harm arise. I also want to talk to you about the kinds of technical guardrails we put in place around copyright protection. We have taken a multi-layer approach. So for instance, this happens at the model level first and foremost. We have made a tremendous amount of effort to keep the training data of our models free and clear of IP and copyrighted material. Second, we've developed citation checks on the model outputs. So we have in the model and then the model outputs. These citation checks, we call them, scan for known sources of IP, both your own data as well as external sources. And then third and finally, our terms of service provide customers with third-party indemnification against any issues arising from training data. This is really remarkable. And so again, we aim to give you confidence and peace of mind that you can use generative AI not in just a pilot setting, but really out in the world, in use, in production. And finally, we continue to draw on not only our experiences in cloud, but also across Google, with Google Research and other product areas like YouTube and search, to continue to develop best practices and learnings and sharing learnings with customers. So for instance, there are many playbooks that you can find on our website that were developed by our research partners. We also have specialized trainings for different audiences, from data scientists to UX researchers. There's even a specialized course for customers and partners on Skills Boost about how to set up your own governance process. So we're continually updating our guidance and best practices. We know this is an emerging field, and we bring both our years of experience in implementing AI and also some of the best cutting-edge research around what we do in this new field. We'll be continuing to update the kinds of both technical guardrails as well as best practices that we share throughout the next weeks, actually, months, and I think over the coming years. So with that, I want to hand it back to Neama, the full expert here, to give a summary of where we've been.
Huh? No? All right, there it is. All right, cool. This is my encore. Okay. So in summary, we had those 4 questions, remember? We started with those. By the way, we will turn it over. We have a customer experiences after this, but I want to summarize the enterprise readiness aspect here. What was it? It was my data is my differentiator. I want to use my data to customize my models, and I want to have data governance and privacy in place, right? That was the first one. What was the second one? The second one was that I want to deploy generative AI everywhere. I want every one of my employees to be able to use generative AI, but I need to do this with security and compliance support across the world. What was the third one? The third one was I want to scale up to meet this moment. You're going to have tons of customers, tons of users, tons of use cases to be able to build this on top of our infrastructure that is reliable and sustainable. And then fourth, I need, not want, I need to be effective, safe, compliant, responsible. This is where responsible AI comes into play. So this is what we call enterprise readiness. My last point before I turn it over to my good friend Doug is that you are adopting a platform, not a model. This is really, really important. I want you to understand this, right? It doesn't matter what model you're using. It could be the PaLM first-party model. It could be Llama 2 from a third party. It could be an open source model. What you want to do is have enterprise-grade, enterprise-ready infrastructure across the board. You want to have data governance and privacy, security and compliance, infrastructure reliability and sustainability, and responsible AI, no matter which model you're running. And you can do that now on Google Cloud. You can do it with Llama, you can do it with PaLM, you can do it with whatever. So again, models will come and go. The platform is what stays. And with that, I want to turn it over to my very good friend Doug to actually talk to you about a real-world use case where a customer puts responsible AI and enterprise readiness into practice. Doug?
I don't think I'm on, mate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we're good now. We're good now. So yes, thanks everyone. I'm Doug English, one of the co-founders of CultureAmp and CTO. And while we're here today in this session, another 10,750 questions will be answered on the CultureAmp platform, allowing our customers to better understand their employees and how to intentionally create a better culture. I think it's fair, I think everyone here would agree that generative AI is right at the very top of the hype curve right now, with the promise to totally transform the way companies operate. And some of this is for good reason. AI enables us to do things that simply wouldn't make sense without it. It is a massive step change in automation. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. Today, at CultureAmp, we put people at the centre of everything that we do. So when we came to looking at AI, we had to think very carefully about where and how we might introduce it, particularly when it came to things like privacy, anonymity, and bias. Today, I'm going to take you through a decision-making framework that we've been using at CultureAmp to help us decide where and how to invest in AI. And then I'm going to show you an early look at a generative AI application that we are working on at the moment that will be released later in the year on the Vertex platform. But starting with the decision-making framework, the 3 steps that we focus on are building trust, keeping control, and expanding value. Oh, going the wrong way. Here we go. So building trust. Keeping private data private is the bedrock of building trust. To introduce AI responsibly, it is essential to have good data governance. Do you know the classification of your data? Are you managing the life cycle of your data? Are you interrogating your training data for unintended bias? Are you complying with relevant regulations, particularly when it comes to PII? So for example, if you're using PII to train models, what processes do you have in place to make sure that you can comply with regulatory requirements, such as data deletion requests? As we've heard from Neama and Madeleine, these concepts have been built in from the ground up with the Vertex platform. And so it's been a great partnership to be able to deal with a lot of the challenges that we have in terms of how we keep our data safe. But once we've focused on ensuring and then demonstrating that our data is safe, the next question is, will the customer trust the outcome or the output of the generative AI? And this is made more challenging by the fact that there is no one right answer for the output of generative AI. Of course, there are many wrong answers. So the thing that we've been focusing on is how do we make sure that the results are explainable? How do we help the customers to understand what was the reasoning, what was behind the output, and how can they, using that as a way to build confidence in the output. If we can do that well, it goes a long way towards building trust, even if they don't 100% agree with the output. This is actually very similar to what we went through in the 80s when computers first started doing accounting calculations right the way across the industry. It took time for accountants to build trust in the software, and they did it by comparing handwritten calculations with the computer's results. So if we can help the customers to understand to delve deeper behind what is being presented and connect it to the things that are real underneath the summary, it goes a long way towards building trust, but it also puts them in the driver's seat for making decisions. We think of AI as an intelligent but subservient enabler, not the driver of decisions. Think of it as like a junior who's working for you, and you've asked them to summarise some information. You need to be able to direct their work, and if it comes to it, you need to be able to correct their work. AI can be really good at drawing out the insights, but you still need to shape the context and decide where to put the emphasis. Our customers want to be able to play with the output, so we let them. What we want is to have a set of tools that allow them to identify the themes, draw out the insights, test their theories and hypotheses, but at the end of the day, edit anything they want to. At the end of the day, at its core, AI is lightning fast at coming up with the well-considered standard answer, but the real magic happens when humans interact and add the creative flair. And what is most important at the end of the day is that our customers take total ownership for the output and the actions that come off the back of it. And to do this, we also need to be able to demonstrate that we're adding value. Adding generative AI capabilities as a gimmick to your platform is both pointless and very expensive. But in the right applications, it can add enormous value. As an example, take one of our typical customers, say a 10,000 employee company running a survey. Even if every participant of the survey is only providing a handful of comments on the survey, our survey administrators are still faced with trying to make sense of literally tens of thousands of comments. Historically, these would either be skimmed and mostly ignored, or our survey administrators would quite literally be spending days reading every comment, categorising them, trying to make sense of them. This manual process is both error-prone and prone to bias. Generative AI can do the heavy lifting and help our customers to move forward with confidence much faster than they would be able to if we didn't have that capability in the platform. So let me show you what this might look like. These are some screen designs of the capability that we're building at the moment that will be going to production later in the year. And as we walk through building the screens, we're focusing on those three aspects. So the three aspects of building trust, keeping control, and expanding value. So you can see here in the summary, we've used sentiment analysis to understand which comments are positive and negative, and then we've summarised those to draw out what are the main themes that we're seeing across each. Then at the bottom here, we have a bunch of insights that we've been able to derive from the body of comments. Up in the top right, there's a refine button. That's where the customer can play. So in there, they will be able to get to features that allow them to, for example, expand on one of the topics or add the experience of a particular segment of the company that they know that the exec is particularly worried about. If you hover over any of those areas in yellow, if we go, next screen, you'll actually be able to delve in and see what are some of the exemplar comments that we used to drive that summary. And so it's helping them connect the summary with what's really happening. And then finally, we're introducing other lenses, such as which comments are the most actionable. So if we can surface the most actionable comments early, it means that, particularly for ones that have got urgency, they can deal with them straight away before they've even read through the rest of the set of comments. So thank you, Neama and Madeleine, for the opportunity for me to share some of the Culture Amp story. I'm going to be around for the rest of the conference, so if you want to continue the conversation out of this session, I'm absolutely very keen to talk.